our Demystifying Applied Machine Learning panel. So I would request Kavita and Pavitra to give a short introduction about themselves. Should we go with Kavita first?
Hi everyone, Kavita here. I started my journey as an intern at Versim Analytics. It's a predictive analytics company. So ever since I started working, I was working in data space, and I worked there for about 6 years in that company, where everyone was speaking about accuracy, models, ROC, and in 2-3 years when I was working as a data crawling engineer. So I built the infrastructure, and I started having interns who were actually um, into API building, what work I have done already, or data crawling. And I started getting interns who actually are today in Caltech or UC California, or in MIT also. One of the student intern who worked with me, she's in MIT today. So basically they were that caliber students who were 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who were working as interns with me. So I was more inspired when I was mentoring them. So the mentee-mentor relationship is something that I have learned a lot in my career to begin with. And after working for several years in that company for about 3 years, then I started learning my data science path myself, and I actually was explaining what I was doing at office, so to build the credibility and trust what they know about me to what that I have a capacity. And then I started doing data science work in that company as well, and then moved to India. Then here I worked at EY, and now at IBM. At IBM, when I was working, I was actually working as a microservice solution architect. So where we implement big data technologies and microservice together. I was actually missing a gap of ML work. So I started actually doing teaching over the weekends on ML. And one of the senior most technical architect at IBM knew what I was doing on my side jobs. So he was the one who also one of the core member of Quantum team in India. So he just asked me, "Do you know anything about quantum?" I'm like, I seriously don't know what is quantum today, but give me a week of time. Then I realized there is something has a programming aspect for quantum, and that is Qiskit. That's something that I started exploring. So, I mean, if they show something like this much of information, if we can show the trust in that much of information, what they show, they start believing in us, is what I realized. And I started getting quantum projects with them. So after doing quantum projects for 1 year, I there was a stretch assignment mostly for me. Then I became a full-time quantum data scientist in IBM itself. So my passion towards ML actually took me to quantum as well, which I did not think that I would explore at all. So this is my introduction, and I'm glad for the opportunity. Thanks, Ranjini. Thanks, Sanju.
Thank you, Kavita. So,
Hi,
Pavitra?
I'm Pavitra. I work as a staff data scientist in Swiggy. So if you ever feel that Swiggy has not delivered your food on time, you can ask me, because we are the data science folks there in Swiggy, seeing to that we are delivering the food on time for you. Before I joined Swiggy, I ran my own AI startup. It was called as Kint.io. And we specialized in computer vision. And most importantly, we were working on sports analytics. 2019, last year, Swiggy actually hired us. And since then, I've been working in Swiggy. And we've been doing some interesting work here regarding food tech. Not sure if you know about this restaurant called as the Bowl Company. That's Swiggy's private brand. And there we actually used a computer vision rig. Basically, it's a camera with an edge device, which classifies whether it's a paneer biryani that's going out or a chicken biryani that's going out, such that you don't have any mix-ups. And it's been this kind of an automated check has been very, very helpful. We've also been using computer vision and a lot of use cases in Swiggy, even image fraud, etc. So it's a very interesting time to be here, especially if you're working in an Indian company, working on real Indian problems and delivering solutions for India.
Right. Thanks, Pavitra. So, let's move on. So, today AI has been the driver for various technologies and various industries. So it is the available in every industry, and it has a horizontal. It is a horizontal which is cutting across all the units of a company. So today AI enables music composition. It enables new recipes to be created, and it also helps in making informed decisions about products, sales, incorporating customer feedbacks, and everything for a retail industry. So AI is everywhere. So as a data scientist or a machine learning expert, what is the several aspects that we have to consider about applying machine learning techniques for solving problems and uh, uh, for optimizing the algorithms that we are using in our day-to-day real life scenarios. So as Pavitra works with Swiggy and dealing with real-time problems, let's start with Pavitra to let her share her experiences, how she has applied AI/ML in her day-to-day work, and what all she has considered in productionizing them.
Thanks, Rajni. So it's we actually live in extraordinary times now, thanks to COVID. When COVID hit, just like every other business, Swiggy has also was quite badly hit, and we started looking at what are the things that we can do here, such that we can deliver safety to customers. And the first thing that we all decided was that what we need to give masks to our delivery executives, because they also need to be protected, and they should also not spread COVID or any other issues should happen there, right? So we were looking at that, and the first thing that I kind of proposed was, like, can we do some kind of a mask deduction, wherein we'll check whether the delivery executive is wearing a mask or not, and only then he can start the duty. Only then he can go and deliver Swiggy orders. And this was something that was discussed, let's say, in the end of March, and I think in 10 days we went to production. In the sense that we actually developed the model and also deployed it such that we were one of the first few companies to do that on the ground. And we actually even told the customers that what, even if you have some issues with the Ds, the delivery executives not wearing the mask, please let us know. So how did all this happen? See, mask detection as such, it was like, there is, if any deep learning problem, the first thing that we should look for is a data set. Did we have a data set? No. The only data set that is available was of a data set of Southeast Asian faces wearing masks. So Southeast Asian people have been wearing masks for quite some time, and that was the only data set that was available, which could be used for commercial purposes. So we took up that data set and we trained it, and we used a really interesting architecture called as retina face. So it's basically object detection for faces, but this time we're going to check whether it's a face or a face without a mask. And the next thing that we're also doing is, what kind of a mask is the person wearing? Like, is it a medical mask that person is wearing, or is it one of those N95 masks, or is it one of those, Wildcraft has brought some kind of a 6-layer kind of a mask? Can we also look at that? So that is the next challenge for us. And the most important thing here is also the inferencing time, right? Because what happens is, DL is expensive. Deep learning, putting deep learning models in production is expensive, because they're going to eat your GPUs, and GPUs are expensive. So what you do is, you usually use your CPUs, the normal CPUs that you have, but then a pretty, a kind of a stronger CPU, and then you say that let's infer our model on top of this. So it was a very interesting thing that we all did, because it was also about bringing the engineering, the product, and the business all together, and then we had to also deliver something in 10 days. This is where I've been in this field for like last 5 years now, but I could see that AI actually made a difference. And it's something that we could do within like 10 days, and it's not like something that needed some 2-3 months or 6 months of training and then figuring things out. So it's, at the end of the day, I feel that it's not just about developing a model. It's also about putting a model into production, or in a place wherein it is useful for your business, for your customers, for your users. Else it doesn't deliver value. It doesn't deliver it doesn't help your reality of your business. So that's where the gap that we should bridge comes up. So yeah, it was a pretty interesting thing that we did. But one other thing I wanted to add was the bias. See, when we are using Southeast Asian faces, right? Now we Indians have a darker skin tone, and they don't have a, probably they have a fairer skin tone. And if you have a dark skin tone, sometimes AI brings in this bias because it has only learned to use fairer skin tone for detecting faces with masks. How else are we going to remove this bias? And that's where building our own data set comes into picture. And also using other techniques like there's something called as a focal loss, creating your own synthetic data sets that also come into picture. And that's what we also did when we did the version 2 of the model. So it is more about how you take AI solution and how do you put it across as an Indian solution which works for us. Ranjini?
Pavitra, that brings you an important point. I was working on COVID mask detection also. So I actually trained the model on all white face.
Hmm.
What happened was I was so proud of it. I was showing at office. I was showing here at near my house, and then I took it to one of my uncle's house, who was wearing black mask and was pretty dark too. So because of the skin tone and the mask is also black, it was not detecting. And I'm showing with pride, and it's not detecting now. How am I going to justify? And I actually started with saying I want to see where it fails. So because I had that understatement that the statement underlined that I want to see where it fails, and I now know where it fails. And it was not detecting the faces of multiple faces; it was detecting only one face. And then I also realized maybe because I've trained only one face always. So there are many things that we learn on the go, right?
Right.
Good
So
point.
that, yeah. So the thing is, it's also like the model that I had used is called as a retina face, which actually performs really well for even, let's say there are some 50 faces in a image. But in my use case, actually, just for only one person. So sometimes you really have to also, when you kind of prune and optimize your model for the solution that you need to bring it down to. So for me, it was the whole experience that you could deliver AI like an engineering project, which was giving impact right then and there, which is always missing in many of the AI projects.
Nice to hear that, Pavitra. I had some technical glitches, but I'm back now. Thank you for the useful insights. And now to Kavita. So, Kavita, you have worked on various use cases and various techniques like classification, data mining, sentiment analysis, and now you have ventured into quantum computing. Can you share some insights on how you have applied machine learning for solving various problems and some facts to consider?
Sure, Ranjini. Thank you. So the basic thing is that I want to learn, I want to do, I want to grow is something that has kept me growing. I started as a data crawling engineer, as I mentioned. So it was basically crawling data from nothing, right? So it was purely data engineering what I was doing, data engineering, processing, and all the process data was going to a data scientist, and he was doing something magical to make my data look so good. And that is something actually eyeballs me, like I want to go do that too. And whenever this guy was going, this data scientist was going to his hometown, maybe 3 to 5 weeks a year he was going. That is when I was getting an opportunity to work on his or programming language. He was not using Python then. After couple years he started working on Python ML models, and I knew Python by then, so it was easy to pick on. The basic thing here is programming, right? So don't hesitate learning programming, whether it is new or old. Pick on any programming language. But if you want to become a data scientist, then R for statistical analysis, Python for programming, and for ML models also. So pick on programming language and learn that language is something that would help me. The enthusiasm for learning new languages and applying for what really makes me happy, right? So in this company, which was predictive analytics company, there was a time when we actually had to deliver a project for Microsoft, and I was crawling data for news then. So the news data that I was crawling was supposed to be going out as a news classification product. And where do I even get the training set? And that happened in a short burst of time, like just like how Pavitra explained. In 15-20 days, I was able to get the news classification model out, and that was my first model actually. And I was very happily. I even went to Microsoft and integrated my news classification with them. They already had news classification with Bing News, but this news classification was going as a version, one of the products basically from our company. I was working in a product-based company. So it went from here. We were working on lead generation. For lead generation also, I was crawling data, processing and cleaning the data. Today, when I came back to India and I was speaking with a couple data scientists, I had an understanding that you don't even get the data. I don't like data engineering. I just like modeling. And that is not how it works actually. As Pavitra mentioned, data scientist is about complete engineering cycle. So getting the data, processing, cleaning it. So we have to get our hands dirty. Only then we understand the importance of this data, because the data engineer who gives you data might have lost some important information that you might need. I mean, that would give you a lot of insights. So those kind of work really helped me to excel in my data science career, to be precise. After which I started working on sentiment analysis on Amazon reviews, basically. The reason I worked on Amazon reviews is because we were working on lead generation product in our company. And then Amazon's customer Fisher Price was one of our customers too. So Fisher Price had, with kids, there's a lot of toys, right? They're made from Fisher Price. So with that, I started analyzing what sentiments are bad, what sentiments are good. So I use name-based classifier for this one. And that's one of the basic things. And moving forward from there, now sentiment analysis is done, and then data engineering from Amazon data to our company, it's always difficult. So why don't we use Kafka? So that there comes again big data skills. So I got that intersection of Kafka streaming or other big data, this one, right? And AWS or Azure, any cloud it is, I'm comfortable with any of these clouds, because that is not a blocker, is something that we should be very clear with, that, I need to now work on AWS. I don't know how do I work on this project. Please don't consider like that, because that's just another technology. There's a lot of YouTube videos on many of these technologies. When we learn, we can integrate all of them together, and then being a data scientist is just not working on models. When we become a full data science engineer, full stack data scientist, then you have more value. That is how I actually ventured into quantum. What happened? Sure. I was a solution architect, working on microservice architecture, microservice architecture for a data movement. Actually, we were moving data from one place to another place. So for that, we had a bunch of microservices, Kafka, Camel, and big data technologies, right? And it is also in Redshift, AWS. We were deploying that at that time. I was working for many hours, and then the people at my company knew that I was also working on ML on a side project. So yes. I always keep that ML as a side project, and because of which I entered quantum. And in quantum, if any of you want to learn, it's actually possible to go and explore for Python explorers. There is something called QSkit. So QSkit access quantum computing IBM machines. So we can work on QSkit and understand what is how to work with quantum computers. So in classical computers, it's just ones or zeros, but in quantum computers, it's not just ones or zeros. The measurements boils down to ones or zeros, but it is always in the superposition state. That is actually the very nature of our human existence, right? We are not always ones or zeros. When you want to wake up at morning at 5 a.m., yeah, I really want to wake up at 5 a.m., but I really don't want to. So you're in two states, always in the dilemma state. That is what quantum mechanics, basics of quantum mechanics is. And quantum computing is built on quantum mechanics, actually. So which is the nature of computing. So I'm exploring quantum computing, and I'm working on optimization algorithms on quantum computers today.
Nice. Thanks, Kavita. Thanks for the insights that you shared on how to apply machine learning techniques in various problems and various scenarios, real life scenarios. So now that we have known where to apply machine learning, so it is also equally important to understand and differentiate where not to apply machine learning techniques, or like where it doesn't make sense to use any algorithms to find some details. It may be like those are so clear, or this problem does not fall under any does not have a solution with machine learning techniques. So have you come across any use case that is given to you for using AI/ML to find a solution, but you figured out that it is not a right candidate to use AI/ML for? So Pavitra, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So I would like to also add one more point to this question, because in AI/ML, one thing that people do not take into importance is that problem formation. They are like, okay, you have this model, we have this business problem, can we just do
Yeah.
it? But you have object detection, you have this, can we do it? No, it's not possible. I'll give you one example wherein it was very highly subjective, and as a data scientist, you have to put up your hand and say, no, this is not going to be possible. And even if you're going to do that model, it might not give us good results. At the same time, we should also be, disagree and commit, saying that this is also going to lead, put a bias into the system. Like, for example, are you going to find a gender for the person, right? That's something that even a company got into a lot of trouble now, and because it's very subjective. One of the things that came up for us was, can we check if our delivery executives are wearing, having the right haircut? Are they grooming themselves really well? Right now, for example, if you go to, let's say, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, a lot of people have curly hair, right? And that's a natural hair that we have. And people sometimes would just wear a hairband or something, right? Now that is an accepted haircut. That's an accepted hairstyle, and people don't see that it's not something like not well groomed, right? So it's very highly subjective, and you really have to also say that, you know what, this is not going to be a good AI/ML solution, because there's a lot of subjectivity and bias that's going to come into it. I've also seen some research on whether you can find a person is depressed or not, with just computer vision, right? I kind of find that in a very, very gray spot, because the thing is, it has already been proved that, people who are depressed, it doesn't show up sometimes in their faces. They could be highly functional people. It's not like you can always monitor them, or just because they're sad doesn't mean they're depressed, right? This is actually really bad for problem formation here, because it means you have not understood the domain, and we're just going to try to slap a AI solution on top of it and say, hey, we got a result, and we don't even know that the result is going to affect people or not, right? Because this is basically, there's a lot of complicated issues here in it. The other thing is also about using a bulldozer instead of a hammer, right? We just need to use a hammer, but we bring a bulldozer. I've seen that some projects just need a linear regression, right? And then there will be this person sitting there and saying, I saw this in this conference, let's do a deep learning here. You don't need to do a deep learning here, because it's just going to, actually, it's actually a really bad solution to do it. A linear regression is the most elegant, optimal solution for you, which will deliver business value for you. And it's also going to take only a week or 2 weeks to figure that out, right? So it's also mostly about the problem formation in AI/ML. It should synchronize, and also should, with your business perspectives. And that's where the data scientist also comes in and says, you know what, hey, I don't think this is going to be a good idea.
Nice. Thanks, Pavitra. So moving on to Kavita. So have you faced some use cases that would not require machine learning to solve the problem?
Yeah, working in a startup company, I have faced these issues. So people come to startup company thinking that, we get all, because it was a predictive analytics company, right? People think you get all AI solutions. AI solutions is not made for everything, right? We are not a parrot here, like say something and you just repeat the same thing. It's not gonna happen like that, right? For example, in COVID situation, for this COVID mass detection, we can't definitely use a naive-Bayes classifier or gradient descent, or simply gradient descent, and get the mass detection done, right? So we need to probably use deep neural networks, CNN, or basically you go into working what suits the problem, basically, rather than applying something that it doesn't suit at all. So one other thing is, you're taking medicine. 10 milligrams of medicine is what is being directed. But if you take some 80 milligrams of medicine, what happens? It's basically not made for you, and then maybe the project is not in a good luck when it is being given 80 milligrams of medicine, right? It's the same thing, basically. So we are not here to just memorize. We want to apply AL or ML. We need to apply ML to a new situation where we can generalize, basically. If it is another new situation of the same type, then this ML model, what we have built, should work on that. If it is not working, then it doesn't make sense. Then the ML model is not a fit. In simple terms, if I'm saying that Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, right? So this particular title, Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, comes into a classification called acquisition or merger, right? So this is a correct class. So, and my ML model has done a very good job in identifying this particular title into classifying into merger or acquisition class. But if it classifies into power or parrot, my ML model is not working good. Either I'm overfitting or underfitting, or maybe that ML model itself is not supposed to be here, basically. So work with hundreds of examples, and we realize for every new situation, my ML model, whatever I have built on the training, is not working at all. So either my model is not good, or ML model is not supposed to be for this particular problem. So we realize when we can't generalize the problem, that I have come across before.
Yeah, nice. It's not just dumping some data to some model and trying to find out some insights, which will not even give any meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, we
So,
need to understand the data, and then whether it works on a generalized aspect. I mean, we can infer, we can be insightful on the data itself. When we get that insights, that is when we can actually apply model and generalize, and that's how I have seen in my experience, Ranju.
right. Thanks, Pavitra and Kavita. So now we have understood where to apply, where not to apply machine learning. And now there are many people who would be, like it would be beneficial for them to hear on what are the scope of innovation in this area of machine learning. So what in your opinion and knowledge is the future of AI ML? What are some specific areas that people can innovate on? Like you had told about image classification or robotics, voice assistance, like natural language processing, or what is in there where people can innovate more. So would like to hear from you those things.
So, I'm going to talk about CD, NLP, and speech. So, in computer vision, I think we call it the ImageNet moment. Basically, the thing is we use something called as transfer learning, and once that technique was figured out, so it's like basically saying, every time you start a model, you don't have to start from a scratch. It's like you already have some kind of a set of knowledge, you have a prior knowledge, and then you're going to use that prior knowledge to do whatever task you want to do, the model to do.
Right.
So once that ImageNet, the technique was found out how to use ImageNet to do transfer learning, the next thing was how do we apply the same thing in NLP, right? I think 2019 has been 2018 and 19, both the years have been the years of, for NLP. Like NLP, it was so difficult to even work on NLP. A lot of things have, we were figuring out something called as a language model, right? So language model is basically how we speak. It incorporates everything, right, from your grammar to your colloquialism, everything that brings into it, right? How do we bring that prior knowledge in NLP? The next thing we have to figure out is speech. And I think speech is once we conquer speech as a barrier, right, wherein you can understand different languages, I think that's where AI is going to make the most impact, because it's going to, if you're going to have a voice interactive UI, right, it's like you're breaking down a lot of barriers there. But most importantly, this is all like in research, right? But what is the future for us, for people working on the ground, who delivering AI solutions? It's more about understanding real world problems, right? So it's not just having just a classification model. Hey, I saw this blog, I know how to do this classification model. No, things are not like in your Kaggle, wherein you already have the data set that's given to you. No, you have to actually figure out what kind of a data has to be, the data readiness for the company. Do you have the data for it? The next thing is also about bridging the gap between your business problem and your AI model, right? Because business is going to say, okay, it's going to take 3 months, we don't need it. Right? How else are you going to go talk to them and then say that, this is what we need. We need to get your consensus for it, right? The third thing is that recommendation engines, etc., right? There's a lot of chat about it. But then when it comes to actually using recommendation engines, even in Swiggy, we have seen that unless and until you have a diverse data set, recommendation engines don't work that well. Even for search, right? There's, for example, in Tamil, it's called as Kori. Chicken is called as Kori. Okay, in I think Telugu it's Koti, right? And Kori and Koti, and so there is this very simple language. Like I'm in Andhra, I'm going to type Koti, or I'm in Mangalore, I say Kori, right? But it should also understand that it's actually chicken, right? So where are we going to get this knowledge from? So Indian-based AI research is also needed. We need to crack that.
Nice, Pavitra. Yeah. Over to Kavita.
That's a very good point, Pavitra. Thanks, Ranjini.
Yeah.
So India definitely needs more of specific AI for India. So AI, actually the future of AI, right? People are scared also that we might lose the job because AI can do all of its job. No, human brains are way better than computer brains, definitely, believe me. I think even better than quantum computing brains. But yeah, let's not go there. So we are the ones who created all these algorithms, right? And we are the people who apply these algorithms for a specific problem. So we know where we are applying also. If we don't know where the AI will be effective, then we can't be augmenting that. So the future of AI exists and it changes drastically. I'm sure it's going to change drastically because in the last 9 years, AI has changed a whole lot. So it's going to do market strategies, it changes, and customer behavior, it changes. Talking about customer behavior, when I was working on crawling data and I was giving data to data scientists, and the way that the product was generating was lead generation, as I mentioned. So it's basically in Facebook, if you actually are in your window, if you're actually doing any browsing of photo or any shopping sites, then you are considered as one of the major leads for a potential home buyer company. Or if you're actually working on any of the home buying items, basically, if you're Google searching that, then you become a potential lead for home buyer companies, right? So, or any of these small shops where you can get all these small items for building homes and all. So you will become a potential lead for them. What happens here is you're working on the customer behavior. And now today, earlier it was not like this. The customer behavior was not online at all. Now with more data, more online everything, and in COVID situations, everything is online with kids also, right? So we are producing a lot of data online. With that, your behavior is right there for anybody, right? So that data goes and has a targeted lead. So if you're searching a particular top, when you're doing just Facebooking, you're actually seeing the top that you looked at Myntra or you're looking at Flipkart. That comes here and you might potentially buy that also. And at that time, you're actually becoming a candidate for that ML model which is running right there. So was it there before? Not really, right? Now today it is there. Just think about the future. It's gonna be even more, unimaginative. It's gonna explore even more. There are a lot of problems like second thing. There are a lot of problems like NP hard problems, right? Traveling salesman problem, which is still not been addressed. It's not an NP complete problem. It's an NP hard problem. So that is something we are working in quantum to see whether can we optimize it better in quantum machines than in a classical computer. Because even with ML or deep learning models, we are not able to optimize it that better. So maybe this is something in future that we are able to solve in AI versus going to quantum computers, right? So we really don't know, and these might come is what we think in the community. Thank you.
Nice. So if we see regional language based assistants and solving problems that are may not be addressed with AI ML techniques and can be used by quantum and some of the other computer vision related problems are those that may be evolving and maybe of greater scope for innovation, areas of innovation is what I hear. So yeah, so you had mentioned about all these, and one other important trends in AI ML has been AI Ops, where you manage all our IT infrastructure and try to prevent any outages or try correlating some events. Again, natural language processing plays a role there. So event correlation and trying to like find out the root cause of any issue that has occurred and trying to like remediate it soon, and kind of those infrastructure monitoring can be done through AI and ML. So that is the AI ops field that is emerging. So, do you have any idea relating to AI ops and its development currently?
I worked briefly for a very short time in a company where they had big data systems. All the data was there with them, and they want to leverage this data and they had operational data as well. So what does operational data mean? A project which is already in production is going to generate a lot of data, right? So, and production, there is going to be a lot of issues too. I mean, issues are there in any of the software, but when the production issues happens, what happens? There are a big team of 100 people harping on each other, saying, "No, you did it. No, you did it." It's basically one problem somewhere down the lane is affecting the whole project, right? So that is one of the idea of this project that I was working on, is to apply AI ops. That means apply artificial intelligence, leveraging the data which is in the log formats in production. So there is a company called Sumo Logic that does log analysis. So I was working on Sumo Logic. That was one of the tool which actually gets all the logs in production. So there is one Java bug which actually stopped the whole microservice, let's say. So why did that bug stop this microservice? Is this the only bug? If this is only the bug, then I need to wake up Kavita, not the whole 100 people team, because she was the one who worked on this assignment, not the whole 100 people team. So which is basically boon in disguise for all the 100 people to go sleep at night, isn't it? So this is one of the way that this project was getting developed, and it was very interesting. Leveraging the data which is already there and to find the root cause analysis of that idea of that what is it of the bug.
Nice.
So you can identify the particular team or particular person might not happen, particular team. Yeah.
Right.
So in Swiggy, we are doing something very interesting, because in Swiggy as an operation as a whole, right, we get billions of records of data, right from your ping data from the DE, like the delivery executive, right? Every 5 seconds varies, considering like almost like there are 2 lakh DEs, right, across India. Then you have your restaurants, like how long does it take for them to get the order ready. It's also about how many customers are coming in. Suddenly, let's say for example, last time what happened was there was some kind of a lockdown till 6 o'clock in Hyderabad, and then after 6 o'clock, right, people started ordering like crazy, right? And there were like some queues of hundreds of 200 Ds actually standing in front of Hyderabad restaurants, and it was a logistical nightmare. So we are looking at, can we detect this anomaly? Can we detect this issue coming up on ground even before this happens? Right. So how are we going to do that? So with that, we were actually looking at a time series kind of knowledge, right? A model wherein basically we can find out that there are some spikes here and there. For example, in Kochi, in this area, there is a backlog. Do we need to increase our fleet there? Right. Instead, when the problem escalates and then you actually add more Ds there to that fleet, I mean, delivery executives to that fleet, and then you solve the problem. Before that itself, you're like, okay, fine, this is spiking. Let's tell the fleet manager to add a few more delivery executives to this geo hash, this geo area, right? So we are looking at that because that will make it more optimal and more robust, right? We just don't want to react. We actually want to prevent
Be proactive.
Yes, be more proactive. So that's a system that we actually are looking at in building in Swiggy. But that's like a lot of data, but this is a very interesting thing. You can build an ensemble of model here. So it brings in everything: your big data, your analytics, your ML, your DL. It's a very interesting project that we're looking at.
Nice. Yeah. So on a similar note, we had also VMware also had a AI ops related work that has been happening, where we are related to infrastructure, right? So similar to finding the root cause analysis within the IT infrastructure, if there is going to be any outage or if there is going to be any capacity crunch or something of that sort, those can be prevented, and some configuration can be auto adjusted, and based on the data that we had gathered so long about the infrastructure, and we try to prevent that outage or capacity crunch to happen. So such are some use cases of AI ops that we have also been exposed to.
And they
So
are very
yeah,
expensive company, right? Datadog, Sumo Logs. So these companies are very expensive to host your service over there, because they're also giving extra stuff like AI ops on not just storing their data. So
right.
with AI ops, company sells it better.
Yeah, there is a scope of innovation there. So where people can, yeah, try their hands out and try some solutions for those sort of problems. Yeah, sure. So I think that was a insightful session on some of the questions that were posted on applying machine learning, where not to apply machine learning, and some future trends in AI and ML. So I'm opening up the session for audience questions. I see we have several questions lined up already. So I would take this one first. So in an AI-driven world, how do you work hand in hand with the data protection laws in various countries? How much importance do you give to explainability of your algorithms?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So how do you work in hand with data protection laws of a country? And how much importance do you give to explainability of your algorithms?
So that's a very the thing is this, right? Sometimes we have identified someone as having a fraudulent transaction, and sometimes not awarded reward for them in Swiggy, right? Sometimes it happens, and the customers come and ask us why. And in that case, it's a very ongoing. It's actually Twitter feud that's going on, and if we just say no, it's going to be AI model, right? That's actually very unfair. And AI models, the biggest problem is interpretability and the explainability of a model, saying that it's because of this functionality that we caused this kind of a result. So with ML, I think it's a lot easier, but with deep learning, there are, for example, computer vision. Yes, it's a lot easier these days to do it. But with NLP and speech, we still need to research is happening, but it's a little difficult right now because it's still a black box. There are like millions of parameters that are involved, and just can't say that because of this actually happened. You can guess, you can speculate, but you cannot be completely sure.
Nice. Thanks, Pavitra. Would you like to add something, Kavita?
This is about production laws as well, right? So it depends on country to country. When, for example, I develop a model in US, and I can't apply the same model on the defense of India, right? It needs to be inbuilt here, and the algorithm that we use is actually local itself. I don't think that is going to be a problem if you use the algorithm in the defense company in India here, which is going to keep the data here itself. If the data is not going to be exposed to other place, then I think it is okay.
Sure. So there are other questions related to, can we use AIML for contact tracing? I believe it is a Facebook problem or LinkedIn
Yes, I
problem.
have worked on it.
Yeah, right.
So I've worked on contact tracing for a long time, and I've applied for patent as well. It was not approved. That's it. But anyway, we have gone there. It's basically called online presence indicators, is what I have worked as. So there are a lot of ESPs, right? Gmail is one ESP, Yahoo, and your Facebook IDs. All of these IDs are ESPs basically. ESPs are email service providers. But think about many websites today. The same kavita@gmail.com, let's say, my email itself. So that email itself, I log into many other websites. So with that, I can contact trace where exactly Kavita is buying, what all is she doing. So her social activities, her website online activities, and her buying activities, her probably exercise activities. I am exercising through because of this COVID. I'm not going outside. I am doing all cult fit. So even that data is going out right now. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure. So with this, contact tracing can happen. Can the question be more? If it is contact tracing on tracing online, this is something that we can do, and with the cookies that you have in your web browser, actually helps in contact tracing a whole lot.
Nice.
And with AI/ML model, just given the data, I have not worked on with AI/ML model, but I have worked on data engineering. Pavitra, can you have you done anything with AI/ML model and contact tracing?
We have not worked on contact tracing as of now. I think the question is more about COVID times contact tracing, right? So not had the opportunity because Swiggy is not in that kind of a line of
Yeah,
business.
yeah. So I've worked on
Nice.
data engineering aspect, but not in the AI/ML model.
Sure, sure. Thank you. I think there is a time check that we would exceed the limit if we are still taking questions. Please feel free to post questions and we would try to answer it over chat if the panelists are around or if any of us get to check it. So thanks, Pavitra and Kavita, for the wonderful session. And over to you, Anju, to give the closing note and ask the participant quiz.
Sure. Yeah. Amazing session, insightful, and we have a lot of audience like responses coming in, like thankful for this insightful experiences and all. So the same takeaway for me, like how and where to apply the machine learning, and like some consideration around specific use cases, especially Indian based AI and all. We got it correct, and the scope of innovation in AI/ML and the future trends also we have discussed. Yeah, thanks Pavitra and Kavita and Ranjini for this insightful discussion.
Thanks a lot,
And so,
Ranjini, and thanks, Andrew. Just one
so
point to add is that there are a lot of AI roles for women in India, and we need a lot more women. It's very lonely out here. It's not just being a data scientist. If you're a product manager, you can learn how AI works functionally, and you can become an amazing product manager. I think women have this intuition that I know we kind of special. So.
yeah, thanks Pavitra. Actually, we had the question like how can we start the career, like how can we learn more, like we could not take up because of the time constraint. Like thanks for answering that. So I'll start with the audience quiz. Please, audience, please type in your answers in the session chat. So the question number 1 is like, what's the latest problem for which the Pavitra applied ML? The latest problem for which Pavitra has applied ML. Yeah, the answers are getting pouring in. So question number 2, name of one of the emerging trend in AI that Kavita has worked for a brief period. Yes, answers are coming in. Thank you, audience. Okay, so we'll announce the winners later today, end of this day. So thank you, Pavitra, Kavita, for the fantastic session and sharing your experiences. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Please join the other sessions which is running parallelly. And thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye.